Hi everyone, it's our first ever EDU on Air conference, and today educators are holding 46 Hangouts on Air, leading discussions on a number of topics in education technology. We really thank and appreciate all the presenters for giving their time to this day, and to all of you for watching. So all of our presenters have early access to Hangouts on Air, which is a technology that allows you to broadcast and record Hangouts. To watch any of the sessions today, you just go to the presenter's Google Plus page. So visit Eric's Google Plus page, and you can find a list of all the sessions and links to presenters' Google Plus pages on the conference website, which is sites.google.com/site/EduOnAir. That's sites.google.com/site/EduOnAir. So let's get started. So this is Eric Curts. He's the Technology Director for North Canton City Schools in Northeast Ohio. He's been using Google Apps for EDU for 2 years, and today he's here to talk about Google Forms.
All right, thanks so much, Teresa. We did one session earlier today, so far things have gone well. This has been a fantastic opportunity. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying some great sessions. I will have 2 more sessions coming up later on today, so certainly feel free to catch some of those. I've got one coming up on using Google presentations to create comic strips for your school, for the students or for you to create, which was a lot of fun. And then another one on rolling out Google Apps for Education. So it'll be a nice busy day here for us. Well, what we're going to be doing, because this is a Hangout, we want it to be a little bit different than a normal presentation. Normally, you know, go to a conference, you got 300 people sitting out there, and for the most part, it'd just be me up front talking, and you listen, and then it's over. Well, because it's a smaller group like this, we definitely want to get questions and comments and more communication. So what I'm going to do is this. My normal presentation, I'm going to kind of shrink it down to, like, you know, maybe 10-15 minutes, try to make it a whole lot shorter and just hit the main points. So don't feel while I go through that you should be like, oh, now I understand exactly how to make a Google form. That's not the idea. I just want to give you the main points, the main ideas of what Google Forms are, how they can be used, and then we're going to customize the rest of it to your needs. And so be thinking throughout that 15 minutes or whatever the time as I'm giving that main introductory information, be thinking about questions, about comments, about things you would like me to go into more depth with the rest of the time that we have here together. And certainly put those in the comments on the stream, or the folks in the Hangout here can use the chat window here, and Teresa and I will do our best to keep an eye on those comments as they go. So let me start off by sharing my screen here. And I'm going to bring something up here. Let's make sure this is the right one. And it is. Okay. So the first thing that I want to make everybody aware of is that all of the materials I'm talking about today can be found online. And actually, this is a little bit more interactive than even other Hangouts, because I've got some forms I would like you to fill out. There are 3 very simple, very easy forms. This is like 1 or 2 questions on each one of them that we're going to use as examples later on in the session. And so you'll notice I've got a link there. And that link is a tiny URL link, tinyurl.com/Curts12, Curts12. Now, to make this a little easier, and I apologize to the first session group, I should have copied and just pasted this into the stream. I will do that now. I'm actually going to go ahead and let me grab these links. I'm going to throw them into the chat here, so the chat folks have them, and then I'm also going to throw them into the stream for the live Hangout. So let me go ahead and get that on there. So everybody should now see a whole bunch of links there. The first one is the tiny URL link that will take you to the website. And where it's going to take you, actually, it's going to take you to this page right here. And so if you click that, it'll take you out to this page, and what you'll see here is, like I mentioned, there are 3 forms, very quick, a little quiz, a word cloud example, and a data collection example. Click on those, fill those in if you would, and then here's also where all the resources are at. The presentation that I'm giving right now, the Google presentation, there's a link to it, and the handout all about using Google Forms. There's a link to the PDF for that. So everything that I talk about is found in those resources there. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. First up, a very, very quick introduction about myself. As Teresa mentioned, I am the Tech Director for North Canton City Schools. I've been here for 20 years. Husband, I'm a father, 4 kids from preschool to pre-med, and I'm an all-around geek and nerd. I'll have to pull up my Doctor Who TARDIS mug here in a second. That's what I'm drinking my Diet Coke out of here to prove that. A couple other quick things about me. I do run a website called Apps User Group. That's at appsusergroup.org. And what Apps User Group is a website all about using Google Apps for education. And Google provides so many great resources. This is just another resource that I've set up on my own a couple years back. And basically it's articles, it's resources, it's ideas for use, it's schools that are using Google Apps, it's a discussion forum with hundreds of people plugged in there. So any kind of question you have, somebody's got an answer to. So I would encourage you, definitely plug into all of the great resources Google offers, but also take a moment to jump over to appsusergroup.org and get in the discussion forum there and check out the great articles and all the great resources that we have on that site. Another quick thing about me is I do also co-host a podcast, the State of Tech podcast. It's a bi-weekly EdTech podcast, and that's at thestateoftech.org, and here's that website. And I co-host this with Sean Beavers and Eric Griffith, who are also co-presenters today in the education conference here. They've got some sessions they're doing as well. I would encourage you to check out our State of Tech website where you'll find the video podcast. It's a video podcast as well as an audio podcast. We cover all sorts of EdTech topics from Google to paperless classrooms to BYOD to tablets to all sorts of great things like that. And a little spin-off of that, if you're enjoying the e-conference we have going on here today, we're going to be doing another one in June through the State of Tech. We are putting together a similar Hangouts on Air conference. The web address for that is pd.thestateoftech.org, and that will take you to this site. There's not much there just yet, but there is a chance for you to come in here and fill out a form to be a presenter. That's going to be June 16th from noon to 5. It's a Saturday. Right now we're looking for proposals for people who would like to present, and those are due by May 11th. All of those links that I just mentioned are in the links I just copied and pasted into the stream. So hopefully that will get you to those. And anything else about me can just be found at my site, ericcurts.com. So there we go. So let's get into Google Forms and chat real briefly. Again, I'll try to make this section go as quick as possible so that we can reserve the rest of the time really just to talk about Google Forms and answer your questions. So first of all, what is Google Forms? Now you may know all about it, so this may not apply as much to you, but in case you haven't used it, let me catch everybody up with what Google Forms is. Basically, it's a free tool from Google. It's part of the Google Docs suite. Basically, you can use it to create forms, surveys, quizzes, things like that, and then share those online with other people. They complete them online, and when they fill out the form, whatever they put in there, it goes back into a Google spreadsheet that you can then take a look at. And that spreadsheet can be, used in any way you want, but it also has the ability to create nice little charts and graphs to summarize the information for you. Okay, so it's a great way to create forms, surveys, things like that. Now, there is a little difference between the apps version and the personal version. Here's what I mean. If you're a school district and you've got Google Apps for Education, when you go in to create a Google form, you get just a couple more options than you would have if you used your personal Gmail account and just went into Google Docs. The difference being, with an Apps for Ed account, you can require that the respondents are from your domain. So I could say I'm creating a form, and you have to be a North Canton City Schools student or a North Canton City Schools user to be able to access the form. Okay, I wouldn't be able to restrict anybody with my personal Gmail account if I created a form there. Also, I can collect the usernames of the people who fill out the form if I wish to. And I don't have to. It can be anonymous. But if I want to, because it's an Apps for Ed district, I can say, okay, also collect the student's username so I know for sure who it was that submitted that form. Now, if your district doesn't have Apps for Education, you're like, oh, I'd love to use forms, you still can do it, no problem at all. Just use your personal Gmail account, go into Docs, create forms. Just be aware you won't have those two little differences there when you are doing the forms. So what are we going to do today? Again, explain real quick how to create and use a form, and then I'm going to show you many practical examples of them, of what we have done in our district using forms, and also take questions. And again, if you haven't completed the forms yet, go to the tiny URL address there to complete those. All right, so before we get into how we've used it, let's talk real briefly about creating a Google form. So on the website, let me pop back over to here, there is, like I said, a PDF that tells you all about creating Google Forms, and it will open up, and there's loads of information there about how to create forms and all the different types of questions you can put in and all the different settings. Now, I'm showing you this just so you know we probably won't be able to go into that much detail in the time we have, but I want you to know all this information is here. And so if you go and you click on that PDF link, you'll be able to get loads more information than I'll be able to squeeze into the time that we have here today. But let's talk real briefly about creating a form. We're just going to make a really quick, simple form, just so you see the idea behind this. Basically, what you would want to do is you would want to go to your Google Drive screen, which is what used to be your Google Docs screen, and you simply click on the Create button, and you say you want to create a form. And what it does is it opens up the form wizard where you can basically build your form, and it creates 2 questions to start with. Now you can change these questions, you can delete them, you can modify them however, but it goes ahead and preloads 2 questions for you. I'm just going to call this sample form, and there you go, try that again, Mr. Kurtz, there we go, sample form, and I can put in a description if I want. Here's my first question, and basically I can put in whatever I want the question to be, and I can choose from 7 different types of questions. Now what you're looking at right here is just a text question, so this would be good if you wanted to say something like, what is your name? Because they're just going to be putting in a very simple 1-2 word sort of a response there. Now I can decide to make this required or not. If I say it's required, then they have to fill in that one to be able to turn to be able to submit this form. So let's go ahead and say done. So that one I've already done. Let me zoom in a little bit, see if I can make this just a little bit bigger for you guys. There, that'll be a little bit easier to see perhaps. Sample question 2. If I hover my mouse above this, I can go in and edit or copy or delete that. I'll go in and edit sample question 2. And for this one, let's say we want a broader question like, what do you hope, oh boy, I can type well today, hope to learn in this session? Now, I might not want just a simple text answer for that because they may want to write quite a bit more. So maybe for that I would choose paragraph text. And for that I now get a much bigger answer, and I can hit done for people to type in. Well, that's only the first 2 questions, so I might want to add more. If I go up to add items, I can add any of those kind. And again, we won't get into all of those right now unless you have questions about that, and I will gladly return and go through any one of these as need be. But you can do multiple choice, check boxes, choose from a drop-down list, a scale where people choose on a continuum from 1 to 5 or whatever, a grid, all sorts of options like that. Let's just do a quick multiple choice. So I could come in here and say something like, we'll do day of the week. Maybe you're asking what day they're filling something out on. We'll do multiple choice, and so we'll give them Monday, we'll give them Tuesday, we'll give them Wednesday, we'll give them Thursday, and we'll give them Friday as options. Now, if it was the kind of a question where there was more than just a discrete amount of possible answers, you could click Add Other. Like if you were saying, what's your favorite pizza topping or something like that, and they could type in one that you didn't think about. So you can have an other option there. Now, we won't get into it right now, but do notice here's a really cool feature. Go to page based on answer. You can build some pretty complicated forms where you ask a question that based on the question, based on their answer, it branches and it can go off. So you can have a form that handles multiple situations and multiple people, and it's just one form and it branches off based on their answer. And I can show you some examples of ones like that. Okay, well, we'll pretend that's our form. We could obviously add a whole lot more to that, but that's good for now. So I've created this form. At this point, I have a couple of options, as you heard me mention before, because this is an Apps for Ed domain. I can say you have to be signed into your North Canton Schools account to view this form, and I can also say I want it to collect their ID, and if that's the case, the users will see that. It will tell them your username will be recorded when you submit this form, so they know if it's anonymous or not. So I can choose to turn that on or not, and I can also choose if I want to allow people to edit their responses, if I want them to be able to go back into the form later and make changes to it. So that's the basics of setting up the form. I could decide to make it pretty. There's themes here. You can go in and pick different colors and different things like that and so forth. But for the most part, there it is. I have created a form. At that point, I'd go ahead and save this. And really now it's just up to me to distribute this out to folks. Well, there's a couple of ways to do that. One is the email option. I could click email this form, and at that point I could put in who I want to send it to. Now we've got mailing lists in our district, so I could send it to all of the 8th grade students or all of the certificated staff or whatever. Or I could put in people's specific names. However, there's other ways to share a form with people than just sending it out through email. Notice that I can go down to the bottom where it says you can view the published form here. If I click this link, what it's going to do is it's going to show me not the edit mode of the form, but it's going to show me the live version of the form. This is what people actually fill out. Their name, what they hope to learn, the day of the week. All I have to do is come up to the URL bar and click and copy that web address. That's the link I need to give people. And that's really all that's happening when you're emailing the form out, is they're getting that link to it. So you can take that link and you can do all sorts of things with it. You could send it out through email. You could put it as a link on your website. You could use a QR code generator and make a QR code that people can then take their phones, scan it real quick, and boom, jump right into the form. You could, use a tiny URL type of URL shortener to make it something short that they can remember. Lots and lots of different ways, but basically you just need to get that link out to people. At that point, they would fill it in. So your name is Eric, just testing, and it is Wednesday, and I'll go ahead and submit that form. All right. So I went ahead and submitted it. Now, so your users would go and they would start submitting the form. At that point, basically, what you want to do is you want to now see those results as they come in. So if I go back to my drive, I should have this form here. Give it a second to let me refresh this here. All right, where's my form? Okay, well, let me do it was called sample form. We'll use the power of Google to search for my sample form. All right, come on. I have a few windows open here, so I might be slowing things down here. Oh, there it is, sample form. All right, so now this is what happens on the back end. Every time somebody submits the form, I get another line in the spreadsheet with their information coming in here. I can do whatever I want with it at that point. It's really up to me. I can sort it. I can create charts and graphs out of it. I can also tell the spreadsheet to notify me whenever somebody does submit a form. Under the Tools option, there's notification rules. I can go in and say, anytime a user submits a form, email me right away. Now, you may not want to do that if you're going to have hundreds of people submitting it. You'd go crazy. But if it's a form that sits out there a long time and you want to make sure you're aware when somebody sends something in, you could do that. Okay, so that's really, really, really quick, the overview idea of how you create a form. Be thinking what you might want to get into with more details on that. Let me now turn the corner real quick and just breeze through about, 8 or 9 different ways we have used forms in our district. Now, I tell you guys, if you're trying to convince your administration to switch over to Google Apps for Education, forms is one of the best ways to do it. Once you start showing people what they can do with it, people really, really, really get excited about the opportunities. So, what have we done with it in our district? One quick thing is just surveys, just regular old surveys. We've used it to collect parent email addresses. We did a Bring Your Own Technology survey for our students when we first were switching over to BYOD. And we found out what they have, if they'd like to bring it in, what their concerns were about Bring Your Own Technology. We've done professional development surveys to find out what people are interested in learning about. So you can just use it just to survey, just to collect information, and so that's probably one of the most common uses of forms, and we see that all the time. I can click on any of these if you guys would like to see examples of any of those later. Next thing, routine forms. So instead of a survey, a form, something that needs to get filled out. For example, staff change. We have got somebody who gets married and they have a new name, or we have somebody who is a new employee, or somebody who's going to be gone for a year. Anytime their staff changes, as a tech department, we need to be aware of that, and there never was a consistent way for that to happen. And so we went ahead and made a form, and this one actually is a good one to show you as a quick example because it uses the branching option. Basically, when somebody comes here, they can choose, is this a new staff member, a leaving staff member, or a changing staff member? Is it permanent or temporary? So I could say, hey, this is a new permanent staff member, and based on that choice, I get certain things to fill out in the form that would be different than if I said, no, this is somebody who simply is changing their demographics. They've got a new name or a new phone number, or they've moved. And so you can have the form branch as need be. All right. So routine forms are a great thing. What's next? Our kindergarten registration 2 years ago, we switched over from paper copies to a Google form. And so we actually have one of our principals who was really excited about this, and he took the big stack of registration papers that parents had to fill out and converted them all over to a Google form and allowed the parents to simply go on, fill out all that information. And that allowed us to collect it in a very easy way. And another nice thing is it's easy to read, because sometimes when people are handwriting and they're putting in names or email addresses, you can't always tell what they wrote, and this allowed us to get really nice, clear information for our kindergarten registration. Now, speaking of that, this year we did do it a little differently, but this brings up another use of forms, access control. The decision this year, for various reasons, was they decided to go back to the paper forms, but they wanted to know anytime somebody filled out a paper form, they wanted to know who filled it out. And so look what we did here. Basically, if I come here to the example, I'm probably going to have to just throw in a bunch of test things here so you guys can actually see this, because these are all required form fields. Basically, we told the people, you have to tell us who you are, okay? If you want to download our registration packet, you have to tell us who you are, what's your child's name, what's your name, your home address, your phone, all that kind of stuff. And then after they tell us who they are and they hit submit, then on the confirmation screen, oh, it's going to yell at me. I skipped one, sorry. Then on the confirmation screen, it says, thank you for submitting it. By the way, here's the link to the packet. And so we used a form as a gatekeeper to keep people from getting right to it, and it allowed us to collect all this great information so we could follow up with them and say, do you have any questions? How's it going? And so forth. So that was a neat use of forms that was different. Next example, resource scheduling. We use forms for people to reserve our labs. They can come in here and they can say, I need it on a certain date, for certain class periods, for certain grade levels, for certain subject areas. Here's what we're doing in the lab. And that allows us to collect that information so we can see our certain subject areas or certain grade levels using the computer labs more than others, but it also just allows us to filter that to the building tech, who then goes on and schedules the lab for them. Next, student feedback. This is one we just started doing. We're doing a BYOD. We do BYOD at our high school. We've just started a pilot at our middle school to extend it there. And what the teachers wanted to do was have a really simple way for the kids to give feedback in class. Maybe they've got a question and they're either embarrassed to raise their hand, or they just can't quite, squeeze it in and get in the middle of everybody else talking, and they get overlooked or whatever the case might be. So they wanted a simple way for kids to provide feedback. So the teachers made a very simple form that basically is just what's your question or what's your comment, and then what they did is they made a QR code, and that QR code goes to that form. And now the students all have iPads or smartphones or whatever during this pilot. Anytime that they have a question in class, they can just use their barcode scanner to scan that QR code. They put it up on the wall, they laminate it and put it on little note cards, and boom, immediately right on their phone or their iPad or whatever their tablet device is, it takes them right into that form. They can type in their question, and throughout the class, the teacher has that spreadsheet minimized and can bring that up and check it and see, are there questions that I need to take a look at before we finish class today. Brainstorming. Okay, now we're to the ones where you guys filled out. One of the forms I had you guys fill out was, I think I asked you, how has your school year been so far? Well, we're almost to the end of it now, so I guess how has your school year been? This is a good example of how you could use Google Forms to then collect information and create like a word cloud out of it. Now you may say something like, okay guys, we read, the last chapter of, Hamlet last night, and, we need to discuss it for class. So in, you using just one word, describe the, the hero from last night, or describe, something that happened in the story last night, and the students could all use a Google form to submit that information. Well, what you can do with it then is you can grab all that information and throw it into a word cloud. You could use Wordle or something like that. Now, what I had you guys do was, I think yours was just something like describe your school year so far. So what I've been doing is I've been collecting that together, and let's take a look at how that's turned out. So if we go into Google Forms here, and here is our describe your school year so far, you will see, now this has some from an earlier date as well. I didn't clear them out from earlier, but let's go ahead and scroll down and see. Whoops. There we go. If I scroll down, you'll see that it's bringing in all of these words. Well, what I can do with that is I can do nothing more than, if I want to, just come in, click, highlight that column, grab those words, take them out and paste them, copy and paste them into Wordle or Tagxedo or any of those sites. Now, I did go ahead and do that on our website here. So if you take a look and we scroll down right below there, there's the word cloud. So busy is the winner right now. That is the most common, the common answer people have been putting in there. So that's a great way to use forms, is for brainstorming, to collect information from the students. Another way would just be data collection. Maybe they need to do a science experiment and they need to collect information, to collect data that they're then going to analyze. A form's a great way to throw it together. I think I asked you guys to fill out a form which was, how old are you and how many kids do you have? So let's take a look at how that form turned out. Let's close out of this one, and that one is data collection example. And so here we have, again, some responses from earlier. But if we scroll down, you'll see basically it's just the age and how many children. And then I used that, and I went ahead and threw that into a chart right there on the website as well. And so here you have all of the ages and number of children in there. You could do that embedded in a website, or you could just use a chart right there within the spreadsheet. So that's another great way to use forms. And lastly, not that this is the last, I'm sure there's many more options and ideas, but the last one I'll share real quick is assessments. You can use a script called Flubaroo to be able to grade quizzes that students take through Google Forms. Now, I went ahead and gave you guys a sample quiz, which basically asked for a few things, like there's a science question and a social studies question, math, language arts, and fine arts. And so people were filling those out. Let's go ahead and see how we did on that. Let's open up our assessment here. And it looks like, let me zoom back out. I might be zoomed in a bit on this one here. Whoops. There we go. There we go. That's better. All right. So now you see I've got all of these responses that people have been submitting, and I can grade this by using the Flubaroo script. Now, if you're not familiar with Flubaroo, basically all you have to do is go to Insert, and then choose that you want to insert a script. And when you go into the script gallery, Flubaroo is usually going to show up really fast in the featured list. You can search for it, but there it is, Flubaroo, and you simply install that script. And when you install that script, what Flubaroo does is it adds a little Flubaroo option up here in the menu bar. So I can go up and I can click on Flubaroo, and I can say I want to regrade the assignment. Now, I've graded it earlier from an earlier session I had done, so I'm going to say regrade the assignment now. And it's going to say, are you sure you really want to do that? And I'll say, yes, I do. And basically what Flubaroo does is it's going to take me through and say, okay, how many points are these worth? And it'll try to also notice if there's any columns that are identification things, which name and email it usually picks up as not to be graded, that those are just ID fields. And then what it does is it asks me where the correct answers are. So you do have to take the quiz yourself as well. You can't just give it to the kids. You have to take it once, correctly entering in all the right answers, because what it's going to ask me to do is to identify which row in the spreadsheet has the correct answers. At least it's working on that now. We'll give it a second here and see it's processing through all that. There it goes. That's probably, yep, there it is. And so it says which row has the answers. I'll select the one that I submitted, and then it's going to start cranking away. And so it's going to purge out the old grades and grade, and now it is going to fill in on a new sheet. It creates a new grades sheet there. It's going to fill in what everybody answered and if they were right or wrong, and it will tell me the percentage for each person and the percentage for each of the questions, so I can see if certain questions were missed more often than others. Grading is complete. At this point I can see the grades of each person, but I can also see the overall percentages of these questions. Looks like people did not so well on Good Night, Sweet Prince. They weren't as sure as to where that came from, but we did really good on Water Lilies. So, I mean, got a little variation there. But what's really nice now is I've got all of this graded for me, but I can also provide feedback to the students. If I click on the Flubaroo link, I can click on Email Grades, which will allow me to send a response back to everybody who took it. I can say, send them the questions and their scores, include the answer key, and a message. Good job. Now, you won't see anybody else's scores, you'll only see your own, but I'll hit Continue. And it will now go ahead and send out an email to everybody who took this and let them know how they did on it. So it's a great way for you to get things graded really fast, but also a wonderful way to provide quick feedback to the students. And we'll just let that go. All right. Well, guys, that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. So we'll go ahead and switch back over to the live view here. Things that you have questions about, that you'd like me to go into more detail on, I'm more than happy to talk more about creating forms, about any settings related to that. Happy to show you other examples of some of the forms I talked about but maybe didn't get into in great detail. So I'll go ahead and pause there and take a sip out of my TARDIS mug. Told you I got my Doctor Who mug here. And Teresa, what's up?
Well, I think first Marcus in the chat window wanted to ask, will the email only work for Google Apps for Education accounts? I'm not totally sure what he's asking.
Nope, that's a great question. No, it will work for
Flubaroo.
Yep, it'll work for any email, because basically Flubaroo, it's just taking whatever email that person put in there, whatever. Because even if it's a Google Apps for Ed domain, and you say, I want you to collect the students' IDs, it's just collecting their ID name, not their full email address. And so you're going to have to rely on them to type in the email address. So yeah, it can be Yahoo, Gmail, Hotmail, whatever. It'll work for any of those.
Awesome. And we have another user from Google+, David Goodrich, who asks, I love Google Forms, but what's your method for organizing the corresponding spreadsheets? Do you use metadata?
Sure, and I know what you're saying there, and that's a good point. You need to think before you create the form. You need to think, like the example in the earlier session we did today when we talked about paperless classrooms. We were making a form that students would use to submit the link to their assignment that they were turning in. And one of the options was to put in a, for them to put in the assignment title. Well, if that was just a box, if that was just a text box, and the assignment was, Lab 15 report, every kid would type it differently. It'd be report lab 15. It'd be lab-15 report. It'd be this, it'd be that. Well, that's not going to work for you too well, because then if you want to sort those, or you want to filter those, or you want to do some sort of grouping of those, they're all going to be different. And so in that case, we said, no. Use a drop-down list option, and you type in the name of the assignments, and they just pick them. So you do want to think about that stuff. Ask yourself, what do I want to do with the data after I collect it, and then I can make better choices about how I have them enter it. For example, numeric data is great anytime you can put anything numeric in. If you are going to be saying something like, I'm trying to think of a good example here. Tell me, your comfort level with this course or something. And if you were just going to say, okay, great, having trouble. Well, if you made those numbers, a -1, a 0, and a 1, or a 1, a 2, and a 3, or something like that, then not only are you collecting the data, but you can apply a formula to it. Then you can actually do calculations on that to be able to see, now I'm seeing, I'm getting actual values out of it. So yes, metadata is important to be able to think about the type of things before you send the form out. Think about how you might want to analyze that data later. I hope that answered the question. If not, let me know. But yeah.
So Joe Monks, actually he's in this Hangout, wants to know, is there any way of collecting IDs automatically from users outside the domain?
No, there's not. If they're not part of the Apps for Ed domain, then they are just an anonymous user, and so you would not be able to collect any information from them. It's just going to be, a timestamp, the time and date. It's not going to grab anything else. You will just have to ask them and rely on them to submit that information. Yeah.
And a question from Nasser, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Can you have the same form in 2 or more different languages?
I have never done anything with different language versions. If anybody here in the Hangout knows, or somebody can address that, that's an excellent question. I have never seen anything in there where when somebody goes to take the form that there's a button they click that would allow them to translate it. But again, that's outside of my realm of knowledge, so I'll leave that up to anybody else who might know that one. Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have a translation feature, but I'm I actually haven't tried using 2 or more languages in a form. So. And Lori wants to know, do you have to make forms public or share in some way?
Well, see, that's the thing about forms. They are public. There's really, I mean, technically, yeah, you can say this is to be restricted in my domain. So if it's an apps.red domain, you can say you have to be logged into your domain to see it. But a form is different than like sharing a Google Doc or a Google spreadsheet or a Google presentation. The form itself, it's basically just like a web page out there. And so as soon as you create that form, that link that I showed you at the top, that URL, that's what you need to share with people. So it's security by obscurity. I mean, nobody's just going to go, oh, I'm going to type in these 87 random characters for the, the key for this to get to it. If you don't provide that link, they're not going to stumble upon it. They're not going to, come across it. So it really is up to you to somehow share that link out with people. Again, post it on your website, make a QR code, send it out through an email, whatever you want to do.
Okay, and another question from Google+, from Janet. Can I embed a gadget on a blank form or spreadsheet and have it populate as people answer the form?
Yeah, that's what I was doing, and let me go ahead and I'll share that again so you can see what I was doing there. All of those gadgets that I had on the website, those are also in the form, in the spreadsheet itself. So if I go to like the one about how many kids do you have, and if I go ahead and let me refresh that one, and you'll see what I'm saying there real quick. It'll probably yell at me and ask me to give permission here, so let that refresh. But yes, you can insert all sorts of great spreadsheet gadgets. Well, maybe not. Maybe this one isn't going to yell at me and ask. Let me just scroll down and see if I can find it. Oh, there it is. It's at the bottom. Okay, sorry about that. So this is just like a chart, but probably a better one is, sorry, let me show you the one with the word cloud. I'm sorry, that's really the one I meant to show you. Describe your school year so far. Sorry about that. It will probably yell at me and say, nope, it's just coming up. Yes, no, there it is. It is telling me. Okay, so this is a gadget. This is a word cloud gadget that you can insert into the spreadsheet. So it's really just a matter of going up into, insert here in the spreadsheet and then going down to gadgets. And one of them, wow, that's really big. May have to adjust that one. But there you go. But yeah, you can insert gadgets and then have those gadgets be linked to that data. And as it comes in, right, this updates. Now, to show that to the students, though, they would have to be able to see the spreadsheet, or you're going to have to somehow take that gadget and make it available elsewhere. And that's what I did on the website. Basically, what I did was I went into this gadget, and I grabbed, and I'm sorry if this is getting into the deep end of the pool here, and there may be other ways to do it, but the way that I decided to do it was I went in and I got the gadget XML, and then I got the query data source URL. So I grabbed both of these two. As long as you have the gadget XML and the query data source URL, you're good to go. Because then if you go into Google Sites, you can do the exact same thing. You can insert a gadget, and you can give it the URL, and you can give it the actual XML data, and it will just throw that right into your site. And then the students can just go to your class website, refresh it, and it will have that gadget embedded right in there. So that was the approach I took, just so that it would be the easiest for people to view right out there. All right?
All right. Another question from Stephanie on Google+. Is there the possibility to set time to answer if I use it as an assignment?
No, there's not. And I think it's worth saying this. I'm quoting Jeff Harris, so I think I'm safe to do this. Jeff is what should we call him? Project manager? Project manager? Okay. Jeff said earlier this year that just like last year, Google Presentations got a real big facelift, and just so many awesome things came out of that, that Forms is in the queue for a big overhaul. So although Teresa can't speak directly to that, and I am ignorant. I have no idea. I'm just guessing as to what it might be. I'm hoping a lot of those sort of things might be coming out, because as much as I love forms, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it, things like being able to say, here is, a time when this starts and stops. Now, you can control that to a degree, but it's manual. I mean, it's totally manual. Basically, if I were to go in, and I'll just show you this again real quick, if I were to go into any of these forms, here we go. I can go to, I can go to the form option in the menu there, and you'll notice that it says accepting responses. And there's a check by it. If I click that, it's no longer accepting responses. And so now if I click on form, nobody can get, if they go to it, it just says, sorry, this survey is no longer open, or this form is no longer accepting responses. So yes, you can say, as of this time, I'm turning it off, but you're doing it. You're having to go in at midnight if that's when the drop dead time is, and you're unchecking that. And then you're going back in and you're turning it back on if you want people to be able to get in there. But hopefully some of those things, another really, really big one people ask about a lot is putting pictures into forms. And I'm, fingers crossed, I'm hoping, who knows, I'll try to read Teresa's face there. I would love it if we could put pictures, because, wow, the ability to then use that for greater assessments. Hey, here's a map, here's a graph, here's a a diagram, and then answer questions based on that. I would love to be able to insert pictures in with each of the questions. And there are some hacks, there are some things you can do, but it's really deep into the pool kind of stuff, and it's really easy to mess up the form if you're not careful with that. But that is one of the other things that at the moment we don't have the ability to put pictures in there, and that would be really awesome if we could.
I think that was actually the next question, if you could insert an image. We also have
I think the only place you can is actually, and if somebody knows for sure, they can correct me. I've done it before, but you can use HTML like up in the description of the entire form, like just the welcome thing. You can throw HTML in there, and you could throw in like a link to a picture there, but that's only in the description, not in the actual form, without getting in and hacking the actual code, the HTML code of the form. Okay.
And did anyone in this group want to ask any questions? Feel free to unmute and jump in. Okay, we have a couple more from Google+. Arco asks, is the information in the spreadsheet automatically adjusted through the form? So I think he's referencing a form you talked about earlier, the staff change form, new staff, leaving staff, staff changes.
Well, as far as, I kind of hear two things there. That form, that spreadsheet where it collects the staff changes, that's just a holding bin. Okay, that does not then become our canonical spreadsheet we go to for our staff changes. That's just where we collect the staff change information, and then we go over to another Google spreadsheet, actually, where we then keep track of the staff changes and all that sort of stuff there. So yes, as they submit things through the form, it is automatically updating in that spreadsheet. Now, I didn't know, you might be wondering, and I'm not sure, this could be the question, I'm not positive, but if you enable the option to edit the form, where people can submit a form and then they can go ahead and go back and make changes to it later, that yes, that also updates it. And so if you've got that turned on and somebody goes ahead and puts in information, and then a week later, a month later, a year later, they click that same confirmation link they got, which they get an email saying, here's your confirmation link, they can go back in and they can update that as well. And so we're actually playing around with some ideas in our district on how we can make better use of that, because I think that's a really neat option to, in that sense, you actually make the form spreadsheet become the canonical list. It becomes the database, as long as you can keep track of those magic links for people to get back in to update their changes. All right? Anything else?
Yeah, Eric, that's where my questions were coming from. This is
Okay.
Marcus.
Yeah.
Specifically about larger data elements, being able to do lookups or things like that.
As far as once the data is in the spreadsheet, I can't say enough about the power of Google Spreadsheets. I mean, what you can do with that is just amazing. And we do, and maybe I should mention that. I don't know if I have an example I can show you real quick here. I think I do, actually. Actually, I do here. Let me give you a quick example of the type of stuff you can do once the data's in there and the fun you can have with it. Because keep in mind, it is just a spreadsheet of data, and so you've got to kind of clean it up if you want to do something cool with it. So, for example, I think I have. Sorry, here it is. All right, this is a form where the teachers can submit requests to add certain books to our reading list for students. And so anytime we want to add a new book and get it approved, there needs to be some sort of process by which they go in and get that approved by the committee. So here's the form, or here's the spreadsheet that collected it. Well, guys, that's kind of a mess. I mean, I'm not being rude toward the spreadsheet. I'm just saying that's the reality of a spreadsheet. It's data going horizontally across. And so as you scroll across here, you can see it, but if I'm a committee and I need to sit down and I need to go through these and approve them, that's not real easy to see. Same thing for like all of our grants and awards and stuff. If we want somebody to apply for one of our endowment grants or something, it all comes into something like this, but then somebody needs to review it. So here was the trick I did. What I did then was I created another tab, and in that tab, what I used was a function which is the indirect function in Google Spreadsheets. And basically what I tell it to do is I use this cell up here and I type in a number, and that number is the submission number. Let me zoom in here. I'm sure you cannot see that really well, so I will zoom in a bit more here. Okay, so in this cell I type in a number, and that number is the submission number that corresponds to a row over in this column, over in the original spreadsheet. So if I say I want to see submission number 5 and I hit enter, it updates all of this all the way down by using this indirect statement. It grabs this and it appends it to the rest of the formula, comes over here, grabs the data out of there, and then puts it in a nice, easy-to-read vertical manner. And so if need be, we can very easily scroll through and see these. If they had to be printed out, it could be printed out very nicely, be very easy to read it at that point. So I guess it's worth saying, once the data gets into Google Spreadsheets, then that's a whole other session. You can have a whole other class on spreadsheet tricks, because the stuff you can do with that is really awesome. We had recently a big form for our seniors where they have to submit information about their graduation and their plans for after graduation. It's like 50 items they're submitting. Well, once that information is submitted, they need to take that data and send it 8 different directions. These 5 items need to go to the guidance counselors. These 7 items need to go to the office. These 5 fields need to go somewhere else. And so all I did was make a bunch of tabs, and each tab was a specific breakdown of that. And so in each tab I said, okay, take the original submitted data, and in this tab, grab rows A, B, F, G, and H. And that's the data that the guidance office needs. Now, the athletic department needs this, 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 and so you can be really, really creative once it's in the spreadsheet. Use the power of Google Spreadsheets to then make that data much more useful for you, either in reading it, and sharing it, and analyzing it. So there's a lot of fun Google Spreadsheet tricks you can do once you get it in there.
This is Marcus again. That's the caveat, though, of the spreadsheet is once you get it in, because I'm thinking that we have a form for teachers who evaluate all the juniors on social skills and things like that. How do I get the teachers to choose from the 120 students? Because there's going to be typing errors. Is there any, like even an XML list built into the drop-down list or something like that?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, obviously, if you're having them type in information about students, certainly the student ID is going to be the unique identifier. And hopefully, yeah, you could rely on people and say, please, 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 please type in just their student ID exactly the way it is. It's 8 digits, it's 9 digits, whatever it is. Type that in. Other than that, no. Basically, you would have to put that into the drop-down list, which isn't going to be very realistic. If you have a lot of students, you'd be typing those in and actually there's a limit. You can't have like a bazillion of those in there. So unfortunately, no, and I'm not aware of any way to pre-populate a form to, like, say, click this link, it'll launch the form, and it'll fill in item 1 for you. So we'll wait and see the magic of Forms 2.0 when Docs rolls that out later this year, and maybe we'll be talking about this next year and saying, wow, remember when we used to do all those hard things? It's so easy now. So.
Well, I'm hoping Teresa is going to tell us that Beta Tables is going to link to Google Forms, right?
Nothing's going on at this time. but we are working hard on forms, and there's a lot of exciting improvements coming. So hang in there.
So I guess as we're anything else, Teresa? I think we're probably getting close to time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd seen any other. Okay. I mean, I guess if anybody has any final questions, please let me know. I guess my wrap up would be Google Forms really are a great way to get people excited about Google Apps for education because, I'm not knocking Microsoft at all. It's nothing like that. But there's really not a real easy one-to-one comparison with Forms and Office. It's like, okay, Word is like Docs and Excel is like Google Spreadsheets. Well, Forms is one of those things. It's like, wow. We can do that, and we can do it so easily, and it's really a great tool for people to get their feet wet in Google Apps and to help encourage, especially administrators. If you're trying to convince a principal or a superintendent or somebody to take a look at Google Apps for Education, they see the power in this sort of stuff, to be able to collect this data, and that really gets them excited. But beyond that, it is a wonderful educational tool. I can't say enough about formative assessments. All we think about many times with schools is summative assessments, the end of chapter test. But research shows over and over and over and over again the power of formative assessment, small assessments throughout the learning process that show you, are the kids getting it, and give them feedback to let them know, are they learning, so you can adjust the instruction along the way. Google Forms are a wonderful way for formative assessment. I wouldn't use them for probably a summative assessment because, again, like I said, you can't turn it on at a certain time and off, and then you can't randomize the questions, and so people may complain about it as a end of chapter test type of a thing. But for those day-to-day, are you getting it kind of quizzes and stuff, what a fantastic way for you to get a beat on how the kids are doing and for them to get quick feedback on what they're understanding so you can adjust your instruction and help them in learning. So it's a very powerful educational tool as well as an administrative tool.
Great. Thanks so much, Eric. This was a great session. I hope you guys all enjoyed it, and thank you everyone who came and joined us and everyone who's asking questions on the stream. We have a full day of EduOnAir sessions, so I hope you guys get a chance to catch some of the other sessions going on today, including Eric's. He has a couple more later.
I've got 2 more later, and again, please check the stream for this live Hangout. All the links, again, are in there for the presentation materials, links to Apps User Group, links to the State of Tech, and our PD on air coming up in June. All of that's linked in there as well. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. This has been fantastic.